The Nolan Hockey Podcast has over 2,000 subscribers, nearly 1,500 videos, and almost 1 million views. You might even hit that this year. It is the place to find Winnipeg Jets recent game reviews, rumors, and all things hockey, but that's not all. They have videos about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well as professional wrestling. I'd like to introduce to Nothing is Perfect, Mr. Zach Nolan.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. Got to get these Canadian teams together every once in a while so we can talk about our pain.
It's very funny because we make up 7 teams in the league, but I think we make up 97% of the YouTube channels.
Yeah.
It's a strong majority.
It's like the amount of revenue that the NHL takes in from Canada probably pays for that, all the TV contracts. So
yes, Canada, the organ donor of every NHL team. Exactly.
So let's start off with the very obvious question. What is your favorite hockey team?
So my favorite hockey team is, I'm going to give a bonus answer here because I'm from Winnipeg. So of course the right answer is the Winnipeg Jets. However, I am also 25 and the Winnipeg Jets are not that old. So I had to grow up with a different team, and I grew up being a Calgary Flames fan. I was absolutely, I was a kid and the logo had flames on it. And I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. So pre-Jets comeback, I am a Flames fan. Post-Jets comeback, don't talk to me about the Calgary Flames. I am a Jets fan.
Oh, just drop them like they're hot, eh?
Yeah, well, they built it so much. I'd go to Moose games all the time because we'd have just the Manitoba Moose. I remember them going to the Calder Cup final in 2009 and just being in that building, and you'd watch it over time. They do renovations to it, and my dad would be like, "Yeah, I think they've got a good stadium for it." And I'm like, "I don't know." It felt like such a distant memory of seeing those Don Cherry clips with Jets highlights in them because I didn't grow up with any of it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess this might be an interesting question then too. Do you have a favorite player of all time?
I do, and it is not a Jet, and I feel like that's kind of sacrilegious. But as a kid growing up, I idolized Mika Kiprusoff. Mika Kiprusoff is the best goalie I've ever seen in my entire life, I feel like. And I grew up loving the Flames. I had NHL 06, which, if any of you don't know, the opening to NHL 06 is Vinny Lecavalier scoring a between the legs goal on Mika Kiprusoff. So we just skip through that every time. I had 06. It was the only NHL game I had. I played as the Flames Dynasty mode. I built a team around Mika Kiprusoff. When I got older, because I played goalie actually as a kid growing up, I got a nice Ghost Ship mask that had the same orange tint to it that Kipper's masks were. I named my first Webkins after Mika Kiprusoff. I was a Kiprusoff fan through and through.
So Kiprusoff, yeah, that's not a bad one. I'll tell you a funny story. My hairdresser, her husband used to work for a water delivery company out in Calgary, and so they would actually deliver water to all the Calgary Flames players because they were sponsored for the team. And whenever he dropped it off at Kipper's house, Kipper always wanted to have him come in. Kipper's got a smoke in his mouth, right? He's still smoking. It's the 2000s, right? But he always wants to hang out and have a good time, right? So at the end of the day, amazing goaltender, probably the best they've ever had in Calgary, which might be saying something considering they didn't have a cup, but just a really nice human too.
Yeah, they should have had a cup.
Yeah.
They should have had a cup, but that's an argument for a different day.
Yeah. So then in your hockey fandom, do you have a favorite hockey moment as a fan?
Okay, so I'll drop a bit of lore here on me. So I remember, I feel like this is the same way for you, that when you talk about the 2011 Canucks, but for me, the 2018 Jets have a special place in my heart. And revisionist history makes it look even better because you have guys like Jack Roslovic and Andrew Kopp on the fourth line when you're seeing them well comfortably in the middle six. It was a team that was built through Winnipeg. So my friends like to say I have autism for it because if you name any game in that run, I can tell you every single Jet that scored. Oh, is you okay? Good, you're frozen there for a second. Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if it was a me or you, and I was like, yes. But if you mention a single game, I can tell you exactly where I watched it, who scored for the Jets. So for me, a fun little lore bit. Game 5 against the Nashville Predators.
Mm-hmm.
It is May 5th, 2018, which is my 18th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching it at home, and this is like 1 year removed from when Nashville went to the Cup final. So that chant is still very fresh, but it's also like really annoying. So we're playing on the road in Nashville. Series is tied 2-2. Although like also game 3 against Nashville is also a personal favorite because we come back from down 0-3. We just gave up a goal to tie the game, and Kyle Connor, they're banging away at Kyle Connor scores, and I had been running, or every time we score, I'm running around my house. I'm like, yes. So I'm running around my house, and I go to kind of do like a light, like jump up into the wall thing, and I roll my ankle, and all my weight slams into the window and just shatters it. It was a 2-level window, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd be on the front lawn, like on my front lawn, but like just slammed into it. My mom went, "What the hell?" And like people are walking up to me, and like I'm a little bloody, but like mostly just really excited. Hang on, I've got it. I put it somewhere on my what's it called, on my Twitter here. But like there's an amazing photo of me just going like, here it is, where I'm just standing in front of it
Yeah.
and I'm showing off the hole in the window. And we would go on to win that game 6-2. And that for me, I think, is such a nice little memory. And then of course last year with St. Louis, that's another special memory.
Yeah, that was, what a crazy series that was. Yeah, and as a Canucks fan, we didn't have the Canucks in the playoffs, so we actually started covering all the series, just picking what we could. And man, every time we watched the Jets, it was anarchy, it was chaos the whole series.
Yes. Yeah, it was funny too because it reminded it. People did a lot of comparisons when they were going into Game 7, and a comparison that they mentioned that I fucking hated was they mentioned the comparison to the Boston Vancouver 2011 series because they said like how the Jets would win close games at home to start the series, and like every game we won was pretty close. Like it was I don't think it was more than 3 goals, but then on the road, like the Canucks got their ass kicked on the road against the Bruins. And we couldn't, like, not a single game with the Blues was competitive in St. Louis. I have never seen a team just crumple into nothingness. Like, I think the best game was probably game 6, and that one comes out of hand in late in the second. Like you get a period out of it, and that was it. So it was very interesting when they were talking about it, comparing it to Game 7. Because I watched Game 7. I remember 2011 Game 7 for the Canucks, and fun little story. Since we have time, I I I watched that game. I was disappointed with who won. I remember being in a Home Run Sports in the morning and asking my dad who he thought would be in net because they wasn't sure whether Schneider or Luongo would go. And I went to bed, and I was such a night owl. So I was like an 11-year-old kid. I walk downstairs. I turn on the TV to watch like Disney Channel or whatever. And I guess they left the news network on. So it just cut right to the riots. And I was like traumatized. I was like, oh, why did they light their city on fire?
There's a whole bunch of reasons there.
Yeah, exactly. Favorite that yes, but yeah, yes, we've covered my favorite moment as a fan.
So you mentioned you played hockey growing up. Do you have a favorite moment as a hockey player?
This is tougher to find because and like my brother who covers the wrestling and football part of our content, it's really funny because there's a dichotomy between me and him. He is such a like, I'm just happy that everyone's having a good time. And meanwhile, I'm like, I need to fucking win this game. This game, I need to win it. And by sheer gosh darn coincidence, this kid gets put on a city championship winning team like 3 years in a row. And I made it to the finals in my last 2 years and got swept. And so to say, if there's a memory, I guess it would be we did a tournament up in Gimli, Manitoba. And the entire trip, it was really annoying because we were like, yeah, we're going to get to play some nice country teams. And then a St. Boniface team came up with us. And we didn't have a single competitive game until we played St. Boniface. And I'm like, why did we even travel? Like, why did we even come here? We could have played this 5 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
But we did. We went to the final. I had an okay tournament. I had one shutout and then one game against them in the round robin where I was like, I think we won with 2 seconds left, and it was like 6-5, and it was one of those where I was like, so we play in the morning for the semifinal. I refused to get undressed after it. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay in here. I think I read like an Artemis Fowl book in the locker room. We go out. First period, I'm feeling great. Tied 0-0 after one. I was like, okay, cool. Well, they'll score. Second period, our guy gets suspended out of the tournament. I'm like, okay. Still tied at 0. I make a couple really nice saves, cross crease. Third period, I'm like, all right, so surely this is where we turn it on, right? Nope. 12 minutes overtime, playing through that. We ended up going to a shootout, and I remember it was a 5-rounder. We scored on our first one. I should have got scored on the first one. The guy deked me out and waited too long to shoot, so I got over there. But I remember going through it, and just every shot, I just remember it so vividly. Like glove save, high glove, deke, back paddle, pull out. Last guy comes in, has to score to keep it tied, gets around me, and I'm like, he's run out of net. He kind of shoots it into me, and I just remember saving it. I remember looking up, and I just see a mob coming towards me. And it was so sick. It was unfortunate my dad missed the game, so I had to tell him about this very vividly. But it was one of those where we got the trophy. My coach got it, just handed it to me, and he went, "Take this home." And I still have it on my nightstand because it's one of the few like award trophies where I'm like, yeah, that they really needed me.
That's awesome.
Probably wasn't that much fun for a lot of parents. My mom would always say that she hated being in the crowd whenever because I was a pretty relaxed. I don't want to say I was a relaxed guy. I was intense, but I was like every goalie's superstitious to a point. And my mom would always be like, I can't do this. Like, and she was just always uncomfortable. My dad would sit at like the end of the stands. Like they're always like sometimes you'll see goalie parents like either behind the glass. He'd sit at the end of the stands and like we'd do like sign language to each other. So like a couple times he'd be like out more, and I'd be like out more. Okay, cool. Like just to work it off that. But yeah, I have a lot of good memories as a kid. I'd say that one sticks out the most though.
Yeah, it's funny. Your mom has the same opinion as mine. I played soccer when I was younger, and I was a goalie in soccer. And my mom hated it too, right? Because you have pucks and balls flying towards you, right? Nobody wants their kid to get hit with a object. So
soccer goaltending comparing to hockey goaltending is always interesting to me because I always get the sense that like it's such low scoring, so every goal feels like it matters so much. But also to the extent, I feel like when you're covering that big of a net, the expectations on you should be a lot lower. Like, I'm not stopping all that. Like,
I played on a terrible team, so I'd get like 40 shots a game. So it was wild.
That's insane, actually. Yeah. That is high.
Yeah. The last question I have kind of about your hockey fandom, and this one can be really, really fun, is do you have a player on one of your most hated rivals that you wish would have actually ended up as a Jet instead?
Okay. So let's do like, because I like to say there's a couple Jet killers out there, and like some of them are really obscure to me, but like I just feel them. Two that I would have loved to have on my team. One of them is Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault has terrorized us since 2018, and he just doesn't like you can't get like it was always a toss up between who I hated more, Jonathan Marchessault or Riley Smith, but Jonathan Marchessault kept up his point production, and he's also French Canadian, which makes it just for every other person that lives in a different province. I mean this in the nicest way. There's something annoying about a cocky French Canadian that just doesn't quite. It just hits a nerve to people. It just hits a nerve. Marchessault is one of them. Joel Eriksson Ek on the Minnesota Wild always has good games against us. And then an odd one is Ryan Donato. I don't know why Ryan Donato is such a terror to me, but that guy just always shows up when it's time to play the Jets. He was on Minnesota for a few years, and he would score like 3 goals a season, but all 3 would be against the Jets. And it was the ugliest thing. I've never hated something more than that. And then just one bonus Jet killer that drives me up a wall that I don't really need on my team, but I just need him not against us, is Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury gives me nightmares from 2018. There's a sequence that where Mark Scheifele, like prime, I have never seen as good a Mark Scheifele as the 2018 playoff run. We talk about how Ovechkin had 15 goals in that playoffs, and he led the league in goals. Mark Scheifele had 14 goals, and he only played in 17 games. He was on another world, and he gets two glorious, like a 1T from Wheeler, puck hits off Fleury's leg, comes right back to him, and he like swan dives into the rebound. And I just went, there's the series. It's over. So yeah, those are the people that I think I most commonly think of. Like, there's a couple times where you have a game and you're like, I wish he was here, but like, those are ones that actively kill us all the time, and I hate them.
Fair. It's fair. So let's talk about the podcast, the Nolan Hockey Podcast. How did the whole thing get started with your brother?
So there's a couple like linking things. So my brother would do like, first off, I would do, we'll kind of see how it merges here. But first I would react to a lot of games. Like from 2019 to 20 to like, I guess the 2019 season primarily, and a little to the 2020 season. I would do like little reactions like on like Snapchat, like just give my thoughts on it. And I couldn't tell if people were being ironic when they said they were interesting, or if it, you know what I mean? Like, you're never sure how much people care about it, or if they just find it really funny. And so that had kind of been like a precursor to my Jets game reactions, which is probably my best type of videos. My brother, though, also he would run like sim leagues, like you know how there's fantasy hockey leagues, there's sim leagues as well too. So my brother would do it, and he would do live streams. And so I would sometimes just get bored, and I'd be like, this commentary sucks. I'm doing it. And we're just doing it. And we had a fun time all the time. And I think it was during COVID. It was our first video is about Vegas getting eliminated by the Dallas Stars in the conference final. And it just got to the point where like, hey, let's just record stuff together and we'll just see how it goes. I had always known that I wanted to have a Jets game reaction. I knew I wanted that. So I had that penciled in a couple months in advance. But I'm like, let's do whatever. It's funny because like we start as a podcast, we're named a podcast. We are not a podcast at this point. Like we moved away from being a podcast. I want to say 8 months in, because it YouTube, and also just like you probably know this as well too. Being a podcast, it's very taxing on a schedule, because you think that like you write it down, you're like, oh, I can find an hour every Wednesday, and then a Wednesday comes along and you're like, this is not working. And so like it was one of those things too where I didn't want to dilute what I was talking about, so I kind of just focused primarily on that. We did a couple Star Wars reactions. We haven't done it in a while. We kind of moved away from it. I tried experimenting with other videos. Like we talked about goals or no goals, and I liked it for a time, but it got to the point where I'm like, I don't know what the hell the NHL is looking at anymore. It's actively hurting my brain to look for it. So we're just going to focus on Jets stuff. So now I'd say Jets game reactions, Jets playoff game reactions. I do transactions, and as kind of a bonus, I love doing the Manitoba Moose. So like even like AHL stuff specific, I will cover it, which is always really nice, because like you'll get a video that like sometimes feels super rewarding, because you'll do the ones where you're like, we'll take 500 views on this, and then you'll get one where you get like a comment like, I think I got one where it was like, I did like a random tryout deal, and I'm like, cool, let's throw it. It's news. And like I got like a guy commenting, I'm a Greenville Valley Swamp Rabbit season ticket holder, and here's my thought. And I'm like, that is so fucking cool. Like, how would I meet people like this? That is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've done that, and then actually, I guess I'll add on from that is thanks to the success of the channel, it's kind of helped me catapult me towards the worlds of sports journalism and broadcasting. So I've got a couple gigs from that as an extension of it, which has been great.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's the thing. And especially with YouTube, I find it's one of those things where if you go off topic, it doesn't hit the same. So, I mean, that's some of the advice I got early on. It's like, I actually started as a Fortnite YouTuber, which if you go far enough back on my channel, you'll see Fortnite stuff. But I think then I had to make a choice, right? If you want to be a Fortnite guy, you have to be able to play it all the time. And it's just like, it's either watch Canucks or play Fortnite. And it was like, let's focus on the Canucks. And so that's when I made the change, and that's been the focus. And I think that's been helping the channel.
And Canucks is a broad enough topic, like the same way the Jets is, that you don't have to pigeonhole yourself in how you cover them. Like what I love about doing game reactions is like I've done game live streams before, but I only try to do it now primarily if it's a really marquee game
Mhm.
and I have time for it, or it's playoffs.
Mhm.
Playoffs you have to, because
Yeah.
playoffs is your biggest growth is going to be in playoffs. But I find too, like based on what you cover, you can talk about it in a way where not just doing like a news happened, it's also speculation. It's
Mhm.
a healthy amount. And I feel like you and I have also seen it too, where we look at some YouTube videos and you're like, you are not an expert. Why are you talking like it? Or like you get the like where you're trying to say genuine stuff happening, and then you'll see people post and you're like, that's clickbait.
Yeah.
That is clickbait. You know that's not what that means, but you're gonna write it, and
Yep.
it's like cool. It is what it is. And then I just kind of stay in my own lane. I'd say on that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So let's talk a little bit about your Jets, your precious Jets.
My precious Jets.
Is there somebody that they've added this offseason that you think is gonna be really, really good? Like, is there anyone who's really exciting you?
Oh, man, it's tough because the Winnipeg Jets have to approach. I there are 2 days that people always find important. It's trade deadline and free agency. And the good news with the Winnipeg Jets for trade deadline is you can actually have a little bit of expectation because a lot of guys have expiring contracts.
Mhm.
The problem on free agency day is that that is not what is happening. You're having players that are planning on setting down roots,
Mhm.
whether temporary or long term. And what often happens is when the Winnipeg Jets are going hunting, they're
Mhm.
going hunting for guys that are undervalued by other teams. It's funny. I was watching Moneyball the other day, and I don't want to say that they're as smart as the people doing Moneyball, but in the sense that the Winnipeg Jets have to pick who they chase very carefully, and they cannot spend an absorbent amount of money to a player who has never been to the city.
Mhm.
So, like, we talk about like the one guy that they were in on last year that I might have wanted another second look at was Sean Monahan. They
Mhm.
offered him about 7 mil. But for context, if Sean Monahan doesn't finish the year with the Winnipeg Jets, they're in no position to offer him anything because he wouldn't have any interest. So it's always a temper your expectations kind of day. You don't expect them to ever spend more than 3.5 mil on a new player. I'd say of the additions, there wasn't anybody really on defense. Like it's a lot of AHL filler, and the Madison Moose were horrific last year, and I think that's what they're trying to help is develop some stars from
Yeah.
that. But I would say the one that I think has the lowest, I like Tanner Pearson and I like Gustav Nyquist. And
Mhm.
everyone's gonna say, like, why don't you talk about Jonathan Taves? And we can talk about him on a later question because you've mentioned a couple questions, and we can talk about that then. But Gustav Nyquist, for me, I think is a good buy low option because the reality is, if your players aren't good enough to get you where you are before you make these additions, like, and I think the team is good enough to make the playoffs.
Mhm.
If they're not, they can sell all these guys. But I think they are. So you're from there. You shouldn't like just because you lose Ehlers, you shouldn't just go the whole. It's all aloof. It's all gone. No, I like Gustav Nyquist as a reclamation project because he's 2 years removed from having a 75-point season, basically.
Yeah.
It's either are we getting a 70-point Gustav Nyquist or a 20-point Gustav Nyquist. Now, I will be extremely upset if it is the latter, but I'm hoping that it's a little bit higher. It's a little closer to the former. I like the Nyquist pickup. I like Pearson too. However, Pearson I think is a little farther removed from having deals that he's been able to prove himself in.
Mhm.
And so tough to look at additions for the Winnipeg Jets always, but I'd say probably Nyquist intrigues me the most.
Is there a new member of your team that scares you the most?
Jonathan Taves, and here's why. Okay, I like the pickup. I like the pickup. People have so many thoughts on this, and I don't have enough time for every minute thing. And some of them are a little dicey, and I won't even deny that. But Jonathan Taves as a player, from what we know, this is great. The problem that I have with this signing is the enormous expectations it has. It's funny because everyone with the brain when they signed him went, okay, cool, 4C, cool, 4C, like depth 4C. And then you get guys, I don't want to name names, but Darren Dreger says the Jets have got their 2C. And I'm like, is he in the mail? Like that's not Jonathan Toews. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm scared about Jonathan Toews because I don't want his return to be like it reminds me a lot of like when we made that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, for example. The first year of it, people don't like it as much as it says because Gabe Vilardi right away got injured. 4 games in the season he's injured and he misses like 2 months. That's something I don't want to see Jonathan Toews have. You get a guy like, for example, Rasmus Kupari when he was brought in that trade. He only registers 1 point the first season. I don't want to see that happen to Jonathan Toews because that will break my heart. It's the fact that they've put seemingly so much expectation out of nowhere that frustrates me. This guy hasn't played since like 2022. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I think it's about
like,
3 years.
Yeah, and he had a long bout with COVID, which is demoralizing for anyone who had to go through that. I would love for him to, and I'm excited to see him on the ice, but I'm also scared that, like, I mean this as no, like, hyperbole. This is the biggest signing the Winnipeg Jets have made on a free agent day in history. You can't name a single fucking player that they've ever signed out of free agency. It doesn't happen. Every single star that the Winnipeg Jets have ever had, they've either had to strategically trade for, draft, or they've been a holdover of the Atlanta Thrashers for the early ages of the team. There's never been a guy who's decided this is what I'm gonna do, like made that individual choice. So for Jonathan Toews to do that is great, but also if he just doesn't have what he used to have, it's gonna be so depressing to talk about it every game. So yeah, Jonathan Toews scares me on the Jets just because I don't want him to.
So this one, I swear I'm not taking a shot. I'm not taking a shot. How does it feel when people make the comparison and call the Winnipeg Jets the Toronto Maple Leafs of the West?
That always makes me like. It's funny. It's really unfortunate that the Edmonton Oilers decided to be really fucking good for the last 2 years because I think they had that monicum well under control for a while. Like for a while, I think the comparison was the Oilers for the West, the Leafs for the East, front-loaded teams that just can't get the job done. I understand. I don't necessarily say I can see the comparison because I would argue that the two teams have extremely different problems. Like for the Leafs have never got a consistent goaltending tandem until last year, and they've had guys that have underperformed enormously. For the Winnipeg Jets, it's been their goaltending has actually been decent. Their defensive structure has been completely off the rails. I think in terms of expectation, there are levels to get to how disappointing it is in Toronto. And like the Jets are still young, so I don't work with the comparison, but I do get why it's there because they are a team that I always like to say this. If the season ended in January, the Winnipeg Jets would have 5 Stanley Cups. And if the season but here's the kicker. If the season ended in February, the Winnipeg Jets would have 5 draft lottery picks. They're completely night and day. Like, but that's what hockey is sometimes, is those comparisons come from expectation not being met. And to say the Winnipeg Jets have not met their expectation, there are some key years where you can say you up when you should have been a lot better. Last year, people will give it a pass because we got to the second round. We had a good series against Dallas, and I'd argue we probably win that series if Mason Appleton doesn't shoot it right into Jake Ottinger's pad with 3 minutes left in Game 6. But there are years where the Winnipeg Jets completely screw the pooch. 2019 is a year that will haunt a lot of Jets fans. 2018, they had a good run. 2019, they're arguably a better team. And they just don't perform properly. They run into the hottest team in the league in the St. Louis Blues, who'd go on to win the Stanley Cup. They blow multiple leads. They had led for 85% of that series, and they had only won 33% of the games. That's not a good stat. And then the series against Montreal, which people always point at, where they're like, how the did you go so bad after being so good? And then the third one, I would say, would be like, not the Vegas one. 2023 against Vegas, we should lose that. We're wild card 2. 2024 though, against Colorado Avalanche, you got absolutely erased by a team that was just is so much better than you, and you showed so much potential. So I understand the comparison, and I understand people being upset with the Winnipeg Jets not like working upon the promises that parts of the year had showed them. But I also think too, it's easier to make those comparisons when there's only 7 teams in Canada, and you've got to pick one. Like if we look at different teams, we will see a path of travesty and tragedy.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'd say the Minnesota Wild are probably a better example of the Toronto of the West, right?
I love so much that the Minnesota Wild don't know how to run a hockey team. I'm gonna say, I say this as somebody like the Minnesota Wild are our little brother, and they can deny it as much as they goddamn want. But I have never seen such a hated like the Jets' main rivalry. People talk about like, is it the Leafs? Is it Nashville? No, it's Minnesota.
Yeah.
If you've been in a Minnesota Wild game against the Winnipeg Jets, there's a blood feud boiling at the surface that is getting hidden by Canadian genuineness. But thank God that we have that series win in 2018 over Minnesota, because that team is I would not wish a Minnesota sports fan anything bad, because they just get everything bad other than their PWHL team, which is incredible. Everything goes bad for a Minnesota sports fan.
So let's talk quickly about the NHL offseason in general. Is there a team that really stood out for you that has improved themselves and looks like they're moving in the right direction?
God. The easy answer, I would say, is I don't know if there's teams that have stood out as much as like there are teams that have maintained the status quo to very impressive, right? I would say the fact that the Florida Panthers re-signed everyone they needed to re-sign is incredible. Like, that is insane. I don't know how you did it. I know how you did it, but I don't know how it all worked together perfectly, honestly. That's the team and the other team that did really good that everyone's talking about is the Carolina Hurricanes. But I've never seen a team, and this is one of the few times I'd say this, that screamed third round elimination. They're one of the few teams I've ever seen, because it's like, I think that team is incredible until they get hit. The first hit, and I feel like there's a little bit give there. Teams that got better, Utah looks good. I hate that they're in our division.
I hate Utah.
Utah is frustrating to me. It's always annoying watching the perpetual rebuild / all-in of experience of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yep.
That pisses me off. That team I hate more than they took everything we were working for. We could go on a side rant about this, but there's a special, like a fire of hell when, like, most hated rival, like most best rivalry, Minnesota Wild. The team that people hate the most in Winnipeg, the Vegas Golden Knights. And I feel like that's a sentiment that is held around the league. But like, Winnipeg has seen themselves we've been gentlemen swept twice by these people. But it's one of those things where it's like, I hate the Vegas Golden Knights because I've never seen a city and a team just get, and people say like, oh, you can't just say they're gifted things. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. When do you know Winnipeg and Las Vegas have never been mentioned in the same sentence in the history of the universe? This is not just a state tax thing. This is a lifestyle thing. No, not a single soul wants to come here. Nobody does. And you always get like these amazing stories. And it's like, my favorite one is Vlad Namestnikov. We brought in Vlad Namestnikov the deadline of the Avalanche, the year of the Avalanche one, where we got absolutely pilfered. No, it was before that. It was the Vegas one. Got pilfered, absolutely pilfered. And and we didn't win a single home game. And Vlad Namestnikov, like in the playoffs, and Vlad Namestnikov goes, yeah, I would love to resign because like free agent day comes along. I'm like, cool, I guess Vlad's gonna go like the Stars or something. Nope, sticks around in Winnipeg because after being in Winnipeg and seeing the whiteout, he loved it and he wanted to resign. That is not a luxury we get with other players. Not a single, and even Gabe Vilardi talked about it in his interview just now. He talked about how when you're the away team coming in, they put you in the Fairmont, you stay downtown, you're not going out to eat of anything farther than like Stella's or Earl's, which is not far from like downtown Winnipeg. There's a no touch grass moment in Winnipeg, Manitoba. You go there, you bus to the private jet, and then you leave. So to see people just idolize these cities is infuriating because I'm like, you would enjoy it here. You might not enjoy it as much as you enjoy it there, but you wouldn't hate it as much as you do. So like there's that. And I think Vegas is going to be good. I think Vegas is incapable of being bad because of how like I've never seen a team more cutthroat, more to the point. If you're not getting points, you're not on the team. Like, and we talk about like the Jets are a draft developed team. So many teams can afford the luxury of not being that. The Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights, they can afford to be teams that are trading for what they have. A team that I'm curious about, Anaheim. I don't know the vision for the Anaheim Ducks. They finally trade John Gibson. John Gibson reminded me a lot of like the James Van Riemsdyk. Do you remember like for like 7 years that Flyers were about to trade James Van Riemsdyk?
Right,
And
yeah.
like then on the last year they like vetoed the trade and like that probably cost Chuck Fletcher his job.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to happen to John Gibson. I'm like, they don't know when to trade this man. I would have traded him in like 2022 and it's 3 years later. Here we are. They pick up Granlund, which is interesting, but like, I don't know the vision for them because they're getting good picks, but I don't think they're coming up. And I think they just moved Zegras. Like they have Gauthier. There's so many teams in the West that feel fluid to me. And like they could either be incredible or the worst team in hockey. And I do not know with a lot of these teams. I think Chicago got slightly better, which is annoying being in the Central Division. I have really mixed feelings on how the Canucks look. I think the Canucks look fine. Fine. Like, I think you're not going, like, after trading a guy like JT Miller, that's all you can ask for at this point. I look at the Oilers and I'm like, you didn't address a single problem you had this offseason. Would you like a partly used Eric Comrie as goaltending? Because like there's not a lot of goalies out there. I don't know what the wait was for. Like that John Gibson trade to Detroit should have been them. It should have been. The Flames, I think, are a team that could get dragged to the postseason by Dustin Wolf, but I don't think are good enough to be there. And Rasmus Anderson apparently wants out. So, like, I don't look too much at the East because we don't have to see them often. And like, you see them at the end of the road, but you don't see them anytime before that. But like, of the West, I think there's a lot of it's going to be a lot of the same next year. When a lot of like the bottom 3 spots in the playoffs, I think are up for debate. The Kings. Weird team. I thought the Kings last year arguably were the 3rd best team in the playoffs last year, arguably. Like they took the Oilers to the brink until Pickard of all people pulled it out. I think the Kings are good, but then they also made some really weird moves. And I'm like, what are you, Cody Ceci? For how much? Like, why are you doing that? So like I think there's so many teams that are taking gambles. And I think for the West, I would say it's going to be the same teams at the top. And then after that, we'll see kind of thing.
So I guess that's our next question is the 2 early predictions.
Yes.
Are you essentially saying that we're going to have essentially almost the same playoff bracket moving in?
I don't know if I go that far. I think Colorado will decline a bit. because I don't think I think it's the perpetual rebuild syndrome. Sooner or later, one of those balls is not gonna fit.
Mhm.
It's kind of like with Vegas, how every year they were picking up great players, but they had one year where they missed the playoffs. I think I think the Avalanche are gonna finish second. I think the Stars have first locked up
Mhm.
pretty nicely. I'd say Avalanche, and then it gets interesting because Minnesota, I wonder about. I always
Mhm.
get scared with Minnesota because they go on runs. I wonder though if they're going to be trading Rossi. That's basically the best kept secret is they have to trade Rossi.
Mhm.
So I think the Jets probably slot into the third central spot. And then maybe I think it's a toss up after that between Utah and Minnesota for central. For the Pacific, I would say comfortably, the Kings should make it.
Mm.
Oilers should make it. Ve- Vegas will make it. Vegas will win the division
Mhm.
probably. And then after that, it gets you could either see it maybe Seattle will look better than they have. Seattle, I always look at it and I'm kind of disappointed with Seattle because they should be a lot better than they
Mhm.
are, and you should have taken forward steps to be a lot better than you are, and you're just not. You're just kind of malaise. You're just kind of there. But so yeah, like I think there's reasonably 3 spots up for grabs in the Western Division. In the East, in Western Conference, in the East. I feel like it's a lot of the same. Like I feel like I think the Senators are going to finish higher than they did last year.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think the Leafs will finish a little lower. Hurricanes will make it. Um, Boston won't. That's always fun having a Boston fan at the. I will say this, and oh God, it's gonna get picked up. If there's anything in this interview that gets picked up, it's gonna be this. I think the Montreal Canadiens are gonna be better. And the French Canadians are never gonna let that go because I love I don't I know that we are Western Conference fans.
Mhm.
And just be happy you didn't make the playoffs in that COVID thing because there is nothing quite as in a viper pit as I've ever been as covering my first year covering the Jets and Canadians. That every like I that fandom is tough, and I went there for the Four Nations face off, like in Canada, the Canada US game.
Mhm.
Amazing atmosphere,
Yeah.
but holy hell, there's an intensity there that is like them. Bruins and Leafs fans are the most intense people I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Like hockey's not the end of the world for me. Hockey is the end of the world, and
Yeah.
I give them full credit. But like, yeah, so but like I think the Habs will make the playoffs next year. I really do. Washington is such a question mark to me
Mhm.
because I think Washington did a phenomenal job in rebuilding. I loved bringing in Rasmus Sandin. Their goaltending tandem of Logan Thompson and Lindgren, they're so great.
Mhm.
Um, I think they might be a little bit on the lower end
Mhm.
of making the playoffs. I think they're going to be one of the teams fighting. The Rangers confuse me because I don't I like Rangers, and I've never had an issue with Rangers fans. It helps that we usually win against the
Yeah.
Rangers in Madison Square Garden. But like I don't necessarily know the vision for their team. I see them making moves and they're fun moves. I think moving Keandre Miller for that haul, that's the right move.
Mhm.
But like there's also just like a malaise in terms of like the offense hasn't been where the offense should be. JT Miller will help that, but
Mhm.
I'm curious to see if they can find a way back into the wild card picture. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are my broad and somewhat in depth opinions on.
So before I will let you go, I know you guys we didn't talk about it yet, but you guys did sign Mr. Phil DiGiuseppe, and as you can see behind me,
Yes,
I've got the picture of him flipping
I
off the crowd in Carolina when he got the
I was
so.
showing this. So funny story. I got time for one more. Um, the free agency for me and the trade deadline is always very stressful because I'm a full-time college student. I go to Red River College and then I also work jobs. Like I work for a lot of sports teams. I'm very fortunate for that. But I was working at a baseball at the low like Jets. Winnipeg has like a local baseball team.
Mhm.
And like free agent day was like the morning nothing happened. Do you remember this? Because they didn't want any rumors of tampering, so they waited. So I'm sitting there waiting to go to work, and I'm just like, I need something to break. Oh, Tanev to Utah? Sure. Like, and you can see my videos that day. I'm slowly creeping towards going to work. It's very funny. It's very subtle. But for the first two, I'm wearing like a shirt like this. The next two, I was supposed to leave for work, but I filmed them in my work shirt. Every video after that, I'm at work.
Yeah.
I literally just would be like, I snuck off to film, and then for 2 minutes, and then I ran back to my job. Didn't say a thing. So Philip DiGiuseppe happened. We were closing practically. It was the end of the baseball game. Philip DiGiuseppe happens. I'm like, cool, run in, recorded. I had seen that photo because I actually played against a guy who plays on the Abbotsford Canucks as a kid. I played against Jet Wu.
Yep.
Yeah, Jet Wu.
We love Jet Wu.
Terrorized. I think I stopped maybe 2 breakaways from him as a kid. But like, yeah, so I was watching that team and stuff because Shelov's actually had an unofficial. He had been loaned to the Manitoba Moose for 1 game as well too. So I kind of like had a radar on it. And DiGiuseppe is a guy I'd seen for a long time since when their run was last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be fun. I don't think he's getting a single game on the Jets except preseason.
Nope.
But he'll be fun. The Manitoba Moose need a lot of guys with a level of veteran comfort. That's the way I say it. I don't like when people go like veteran influence. I'm like, shut up. Like that doesn't mean anything. You just say that because they've been there. It's a comfort level. That's what it is. I think he'll get plenty of games on the Manitoba Moose. Whether it makes them do anything is beside the point. I love that photo.
Yeah.
I was showing everyone at work. That is phenomenal. Like perfectly, like the hand up, and he's got to get edited out because that's the video footage. The AHL doesn't have a lot of overarching cameras.
No.
That's the footage they have of the handoff now.
Yeah,
so they'll have to work a super zoom in or something.
Yeah.
So but I do love that. Yes.
Yeah. I think you guys are enjoying him. If you guys get injuries, you might see him in the lineup. He's a guy who can play anywhere in your lineup. So I think that's probably the only chance he'll see some time with you guys. But good pickup for you guys there.
For sure.
Cool. Zach, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to come on the show today. It's much appreciated. And we'd love to have you on again sometime when it's the Winnipeg Jets versus the Vancouver Canucks.
Of course. I'd be happy to be there.
Awesome, brother.
Sounds good, buddy.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks. You too.
Nothing is perfect.